Oh, it's all getting very stormy on Dawson's Creek. Good, Dawson, you deserve all the storm in the world. As my caption today says, Dawson's a walking hurricane. And I
Yes.
think that's apt for the episodes of this show we are talking today on Discovering Dawson's Creek. It is our third episode of Discovering Dawson's Creek here on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel. Subscribe, ding your notification bells up there if I'm pointing in the right direction, which I am now. For more of this and all the other great stuff we do have on this channel as well. Of course, subscribe to the main It's a Wonderful Podcast feed on all major podcast platforms as well. For, at the very least, Morgan Hasn't Seen and the main show, It's a Wonderful Podcast, celebrating old movies every week over there. But we're here with another Discovering Dawson's Creek, Janine. We're talking season 1, episode 5, Hurricane, and episode 6, Baby. And it does get very stormy indeed.
Lots of drama in these 2 episodes. Some very big revelations happening.
Yeah. It feels like almost the end. I know there's like 13 episodes in the season, right? So but it does feel like the end of a first half. You know, it does feel like some stories have actually come to an end now. One I think major story comes to an end in episode 6 that we have been following.
Kind of a big through line from the beginning.
Yeah, since the very beginning. And I know obviously it's only half a season of a 6-season show, but it's one of the first notable real storylines that has come to an end. But we'll be getting onto that, because I think first we have to get into episode 5 as a hurricane comes to town. Janine,
yes,
the creek, the binder is back.
Dawson's Creek binder is back.
Janine's famous Dawson's Creek binder. For those who are not aware, Janine adores Dawson's Creek and has this binder and has had this binder for 25 years.
Yes, and I printed out all the synopses and have them here in this binder. So I thought, instead of reading them offline, let's read them from the binder, from these printed.
It's a more authentic experience.
Yes.
We're getting into it. We're going boating along the creek ourselves.
Yes.
With this binder. It is that much of an authentic experience.
Yes. And since, again, with the ridiculous numbering of these shows, this is actually episode 104, as the first episode was 100. As a hurricane approaches Capeside, emotions run as high as the winds. Worried that her son may be onto her, Gail has her worst fears confirmed and realizes that she now has no choice but to come clean to her husband. Accusations and mistrust don't stop there, however, as neighbors Grams and Jen come over to Dawson's house to weather out the storm and clash with Joey's pregnant sister Bessie and her fiance Bodie. And Dawson, who is already at the end of his rope over his mother's infidelity, lashes out at Jen over his own disillusionment with the fact that she is not a virgin. Meanwhile, Pacey is annoyed when he ends up at Tamara's house not alone, but in the company of his brother Doug, the dutiful cop.
A dutiful cop? Is that what we're calling Doug?
Yeah, he got a little extreme.
I'm going to be honest with you. The D word that springs to mind when I think of Doug the cop is not dutiful.
Yeah.
It is a different word that shan't be repeated in front of children, even though there are no children here. There might be children watching.
Yes.
I'd be surprised, given the fact, if children were this interested in watching a in-depth breakdown series on Dawson's Creek. But they might be. You don't know. So I shan't use the D word I was thinking of. But I don't like Doug, Janine.
Yes, you're not. You're not really supposed to. He will have a bit of an evolution going through, but I think he's just meant to illustrate a bit of what Pacey's home life is going to look like going forward. That he is the
Yeah.
black sheep, that he is kind of the lost one amongst his family that constantly gets ridiculed. We'll see meet his father later, who very much treats Pacey, you know, if you thought Doug was treating Pacey bad, just see how his father treats him, especially in comparison
Okay.
to Doug as well. So this was just getting a glimpse into Pacey's home life, which I liked getting to see. Because we just kind of see him on his own. We just kind of hear about, him being this kind of black sheep figure. So to get an illustration of that, to open up his world as he is many people's favorite character, was
Yeah, I
great. That
mean,
was
if
great to finally get into.
it was admittedly, but if he is that within his own family, which yes, okay, he's obviously very different to his brother, as we see in this episode, when they're kind of battling for Tamara,
Tamara's
Miss
attention.
Jacobs' affections and attention. Yeah, when he doesn't really need to, because as we all know, there's only one horse in that race as far as
Yes.
Tamara's concerned at this point. And it did actually make me think these couple of episodes. And for some reason, this hadn't crossed. I mean, had it crossed my mind, it probably did cross my mind earlier on. But just how illegal the whole situation is. I suppose it comes to light really in episode 6.
Yes, yes.
In my mindset to that, but it really did kind of take a hold of me that actually this is a child sexual offence. This should not be happening.
Yeah,
This is
essentially.
revolting. But Joshua Jackson obviously looks like a 25-year-old man in this because he is.
He is,
So
yes. So, very much not difficult to visualize, but then when you actually think about the context
yeah,
in which we're given
yeah,
the storyline, it's very much, yes,
it's
not
much
not
more
good, not a good
reasonable
look.
for her to be with Doug, even though I mean she thinks Doug's gay because he likes musicals. There's that stereotype is
Well,
played.
yes, and Pacey brings that up several times. So even before they get to Tamara's, uh, Pacey is giving him a lot of grief about, hey, if you just admit it, brother, I have no problem with the gays, just So he's already kind of been giving him. So it makes you feel like this is a constant kind
I don't
of.
know what the need for the casual homophobia is from Pacey. Admittedly,
Well, I
I
mean,
don't think there's
I
any need
wouldn't
for
call
that.
it homophobia. I
And
mean,
there's also no reason to not like musicals.
I wouldn't call it homophobia because he's saying, if you're gay, brother, just say it. Like, I have no
Well,
problem.
that's true. Yes, he is.
But he says it in a way because he knows it'll piss off Doug. So if anyone's homophobic,
Doug's homophobic. That's the good point. Yes, if anybody's homophobic, it's Doug, and that's why it gets to him and plays on his
yes, but this
mind.
little razzing that Pacey does may appear continuously throughout the
Appear
show. So
continuously. Okay.
So,
Mm,
yes, but so we meet Doug, and he is like a sheriff's deputy, and we learn that Pacey's dad is the chief of police in this small town. So, probably adding to another reason why Pacey is the way he is and why his home life is so harsh because he doesn't live up to these expectations of, somebody who's the chief of police.
yeah.
So
Even though
yes,
he's
just
probably the nicest one of his family, right?
we will learn, yes, that his family's pretty awful. Um, so yeah, I just loved opening up Pacey's world. I'm glad that, you're getting to see more of this character.
Yeah.
And yeah, then we kind of turn to Dawson, who's just being very insufferable.
It's
And
a very
yeah, like
Dawson heavy episode, really.
yes, so of course, he's going through some stuff that would be, would want you to sympathize with him, but because of
Definitely
but
traumatic
because
instances and
yes,
things like
because
this.
of yes, and because of how he handles it, and he takes it out on people who just wanna support him, um, he comes off as very selfish and terrible in this episode, and really puts a
As he
lot of
usually
judgment.
does.
Yes, and he ends up putting a lot of judgment on Jen, which just makes
Again,
him awful.
as he usually does. He
Yes, as
really
soon as
plays the
he found
same game.
out, yeah.
He really does play the same game in every episode, seemingly. I think this show it actually doesn't need to be different episodes in terms of plot, yes, but in terms of who everybody is, I don't think at this point there's not been any change in who people are, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's been ideas that other characters have had about each other, namely everybody's first inclinations towards Jen that we then learn is much different to what she's actually like
Yes.
and what she's actually been through. But in terms of Dawson, it's literally episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Episode 1, Dawson's terrible to people. 2, he's again terrible to people. 3, is he going to be better? No, he's not, but he's terrible again to people. Number 4, oh no, he's being terrible again to people. And number 5, he's being especially terrible to people. Even more so than he was in episode 4, when he just
Yes.
completely shunned Jen when she opened up to him. Now he's actively shouting at
Using
her
it
about it.
against her and judging her in the fact that, like, she's trying to give him some perspective. Like, your mom's a good woman. She probably had her reasons. She can do a bad thing and still be a good person. And she's trying to just kind of give him that balance of perspective. But he
Yeah.
immediately, says, "Oh, well, your slutty nature is why you would agree with my mom, this adulteress." So then
Yes.
for him to kind of
You
make
would
it
know,
about,
you whore, he
yeah,
basically
you would.
says.
Yeah, he's like, you would defend her. And the fact that Jen was so open and vulnerable with him and honest with him so early on in this relationship. Um,
She shouldn't have
and for
been.
him,
Don't
yes.
trust him.
And for him to kind of use that against her when he's feeling something and she's just trying to, be supportive. Really just is not a good look for Dawson. So
It's
I
not a
like,
good look at all.
and I also like that these kind of moments where she's still trying to learn about Dawson, and then that kind of brings her and Joey together because they've had this kind of little
Yeah.
antagonistic thing because Joey is harboring this kind of crush for Dawson. So I
Don't know
like that she
why.
can kind of,
Move on, Joey.
yeah. So I like that these moments like this also kind of bring them together. So when they're all stuck at Dawson's house during this hurricane, and Dawson kind of lashes out at her, um, Joey was hiding in the closet, so she heard this whole fight. And I like that she kind of uses her dead mom card against him just to kind of guilt trip him. And I like, they do kind of have Joey do that quite a bit, I think. So I like that they do even address it with her kind of saying, sorry, it's like a very easy button to kind of trigger the
But
dead
I'm
mom
gonna
button.
keep doing it.
Yes, but Dawson needed
Oh,
somebody needed Dawson to guilt trip him for how he spoke to Jen. So I like it. I always like that it's
yeah.
Joey. I always like that it's Joey who can hold up that mirror to him and really kind of get him to wake up to like how he's behaving.
Yes.
So she kind
And
of,
again, he's trying to liken everything to a movie, and he keeps getting told to stop living in a world of
yes,
movies,
this
some sort of
idealized
nostalgic
thing.
Spielberg
And not everything's
thing.
about you and this. So I like that Joey's always kind of the one to tell him, because even if she's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like it's not about me.
She
So
does also use some. I mean, whether I like, all the little tiny little movie references that are made in there that aren't necessarily movie references, but they'll repurpose a quote from
yes.
a particular movie, or they'll refer to something. I'm sure it happened in this episode. Dawson referred to a particular attitude as being a Jurassic attitude while stood behind a poster for Jurassic Park. And
Yes.
it's things like that. I don't know whether to vomit over or be kind of like, oh, that's clever, because it
Well,
just
we did
seems a bit
get
like,
some nice
ah.
classic things coming up. We did actually get, a All About Eve reference, the very
This
famous
is what I was
line.
going to bring up.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I was like, fasten your seatbelt, it's going to be a bumpy life. I didn't know whether to go, oh God, I feel sick, that's horrible, I don't like it, go away, go away, go away. Or be like, Okay.
I mean, for this
Okay.
show, for these characters, I mean, I think that's a good twist on the line, especially it's Joey saying it and not like pretentious film guy Dawson.
I suppose
Also,
so. I suppose so.
Graham's sharing her love of Capra. Not sure if that's enough for me to like, dismiss her
To like Grams.
racist attitudes. I love Grams because going forward, Grams will be more open to things
Do
and
you mean
be.
Grams is racist? As your
Grams is
caption.
racist in this. Well, you gave me the caption. We'll just
I
say
did give
that.
you the caption
Um,
because it's true.
in this episode, yes, Grams is very still closed off. I know where Grams' journey takes her, so we ultimately love Grams, and even Grams we got a little bit more of her too. Um, Dawson, she gives Dawson a bit of advice, and even in the next episode, she kind of has a lot to do there as
She
well,
does. Yes, she does.
and kind of has to work through prejudices and things like that. So Grams does have a bit of a development actually in these two episodes, which I appreciated as well, which will lead to like the Grams that we love going forward. So I'm
Yeah,
excited for you to see. I'm excited for you to see the greatness of Grams kind of going forward. But
there's something a little deeper than just Bible-loving hater that
yes,
Grams has appeared to be
yes,
at the start of Dawson's Creek. But yeah, look, this episode I think is a great episode. I mean, I love any sort of boiling pot story structure
yes,
that
yes.
forces conflict all into one
It's such a good
cramped
build.
space.
Yes, it's a great
It's
build in
Key
this
Largo.
episode. Yes, everything kind of rising and the hurricane kind of illustrating that. Dawson hearing his mom having these phone calls with Bob, like him antagonizing her and kind of hinting to her that he knows. And kind of just talking about,
I think
my dad's a good man. My dad's a really good man. And, and calls the
does
Hurricane Chris. He calls it Hurricane Bob. And, so then she's like, oh, shoot, he knows. And the fact that he
also,
hears
is
her
she
from
not
his.
being just a little bit stupid about it though?
Yes,
Why? Now, let me just ask you this. Why, during a hurricane, well, for one, maybe the phone lines haven't gone down yet. Okay, usually I would imagine the phone lines probably go down during a hurricane. That's beside the point.
yeah.
There's a dozen people in the
In your
house.
house right now, and you're having a sexy
Um,
phone call with
I,
your your affair
you're
buddy,
having yes, you're having a sexy phone call with your piece on the side.
making
Surely
hissy
this can
noises on the
wait.
phone. Yeah.
Surely
So
it can either
Dawson.
wait or you can be more discreet about it, Gail.
Yes, she was not. She was very sloppy. Especially this is right after Dawson makes it clear that he knows. So
Right? She doesn't think about things.
no, she doesn't. Um, so then it's kind of she has to tell Mitch because Dawson's kind of like put her in this position. Well, I if you don't, I will. And definitely
Yeah.
not fair for, her to have her son in this position to feel this way. So we do get a moment of maybe feeling for Dawson a little bit. Aside from how
I
he
just,
handles the
just smidge.
situation, just a little bit, just a little bit. But yes, getting back to kind of Dawson's attitude, bringing Jen and Joey together, I really liked this scene of them on the porch, and Joey kind of giving her the information about who Dawson is, and that how he's just projecting, and this is what he does, and then and just his male insecurity, and so then they actually have a really kind of funny conversation about he probably has a measuring tape in his bathroom, and then they kind of speculate how big Dawson might be. So I like this kind of girl talk moment that they can have with each other and just kind of laugh at.
And as is usually the case, you would imagine psychologically he's probably smaller than he actually is, because he might get his little measuring tape out and go like this, and he will see a number on there that may very well be smaller than what it actually is, because that's just what his brain tells him, and his
Maybe,
brain just beats him
maybe.
down
Yes.
and makes him more insecure. And this is what happens, isn't it? The people
Yes.
like this, too hyped up, too within themselves, it could be called small man syndrome, but Dawson's quite tall. Maybe he's small
Well,
in
yes.
another way.
Well,
There's
Dawson
the
is not
speculation.
Dawson is not a part of this conversation, but I do
No, he's
like
not a
that.
part of this
I do
conversation at
like
all.
I do like that this is a moment where we see these girls actually feeling like teenage girls, because we do have these elevated situations and conversations that, I think was always a little complaint about the show that made them not feel like teenage characters a lot of the time. Um I always
Yes, they
I always
don't
appreciated
ever.
as the I always appreciated as the compliment Kevin Williamson was giving young people, that they could, have conversations like this and talk in this elevated way. But I totally get that criticism. So I like moments like this where they're just having girl talk about these things that do make them feel like real teenage girls.
Are you
And
telling
having
me
this
that
kind of,
you have partaken in such conversations?
I mean, perhaps. I don't know. I don't remember. That was as
Smut.
long that was a
Smut
very that
filth.
was a very long time ago. But guys, I'm sure have these types of conversations. Maybe not guys like
Never.
you.
No, no, no,
Yes,
no.
no,
Never,
never, never.
never
Um,
had this
but yes, I
conversation
like these moments of
with
Jen
anybody.
and Joey kind of coming together, and also moments where our characters do feel, the age that they're meant to be, because they don't look it. So I liked this little conversation they had, and also the fact that Jen's like, I need to get out of this house because it's very contentious in there. So
Well,
then,
it
yes,
is,
this is when
yes.
everything kind of comes to a head. Um, Gail goes into the dining room where Mitch is. They close the doors, and Dawson is there. And he was going to leave, but she's like, no, you need to be here. And this is where, I told you we were going to get some dramatic Dutch angles happening here.
Oh, we did, yes, that's we did. We did.
um,
Admittedly, I think this is a very, very good scene. I think this is a
yeah.
wonderful episode. I think this is probably the best episode yet.
Yes. And the performance here is really great of her, telling Mitch that she's been having an affair, and then Mitch's reaction. He
Yeah,
just
his
like he
processing of it all, it's kind of
yes.
quiet, it's kind
A-
of
and he's like trying to
methodical.
he's talking about batteries, and he's trying not to like, address it right away, but you can tell this anger's building him, and he's breaking things
Yeah.
and crashing things, and he ends up leaving and sitting out in his car. Even that conversation he had, that whole speech he gives her, oh my gosh, John
Yeah,
Wesley
when
Shipp
they're in the
is so
car
good.
later on.
Yes, so he's out in the car, in the hurricane is kind of, the rain is coming down, it's crazy. She goes out there to talk to him, she gets in the car, and he's telling her this story about how he fell in love with her the moment he saw her. And he made it was a choice for him. He chose in that moment to love her. The first time he saw her, he's even like talking about her friend who talked too much and making it very conversational, kind of really putting Gail at ease, like, he's remembering this beautiful time we had. And then and so we get kind of disarmed too, because they're kind of laughing a little bit because he's making this joke about her annoying friend and all of this. He's telling the story, the first time I saw you when we were such and such age, you were so beautiful, blah blah blah, and I made a decision right then and there to love you. And then the story takes this dark turn because of what
Yeah.
he's feeling, and he's like, just as easy it was for me to make that decision to love you, I make the decision not to love you, to hate you. I choose to hate you now. And oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the brutality in that. And he's like, and I would suggest you get out of the car before I
Now.
physically remove you from it. And just the horror that kind of comes over her face.
Yeah.
Oh, such a powerful scene. Like John Wesley Shipp, so good in this scene.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
wonderful acting. It's wonderful
yeah,
writing.
yeah,
It's probably the most actually emotionally effective couple of scenes that
yeah,
the show's had yet, to be honest with you. And it's not
yeah,
even with the main cast members. It's
yeah.
with obviously, the two of the supporting, the
Yes, the
parents.
parents. And so we do get a lot from the kind of adult characters in this situation, because Joey is also there with her pregnant sister who is engaged to a black man, and Graham's and her whole kind of ideology. And she's very kind of antagonistic towards them. And then
She
that kind
doesn't
of comes to a
look at
head
him.
Yeah, she won't look at Bodhi. She won't address him. Bessie, Joey's sister, introduces Bodhi and she just, walks away. And so that situation kind of comes to a head as well. And she talks about their mixed race baby and how their baby's going to be other and seen as different. And so I like Bessie kind of clapping back at her, black, white, it doesn't matter what this baby is, it's going to be 100% loved. And that kind of shuts down Grams immediately because, you know,
Also,
she's this very religious woman. And so when Bessie tells her, it's not about what this baby looks like, it's what this baby's coming into. This baby's coming
yeah.
into a life of love. So the fact,
Also, I would ask, what's wrong with the baby being different? It's good to be different. I think Bessie, Bodhi, and the baby will embrace the uniqueness within that community. There can't be many mixed race
in
families
Cape Side.
in Cape Side.
Yes. So I do like that this is a bit of a wake-up call for Grams. So then when we do actually see her later not have this kind of great judgment for Dawson and his situation, we're like, okay, so maybe Grams is a bit more open-minded. Um, because, obviously, adultery, the sin, all of this, and knowing how religious she is, Dawson, this is after Mitch has kind of wrecked this model that he was working on, and Dawson's kind of trying to pick up the mess. And Grams comes in there, and he's kind of expecting her to have this judgment of her mother and all of this, of his mother and all this. And she, kind of steps away from the judgment and talks to him about, forgiveness being very powerful. And this is where she kind of gets into, she tries to relate to him on something that she knows that he likes. And obviously, there's also this kind of idea of, Dawson being this boy dating her granddaughter who's promiscuous. So she has these ideas about Dawson as well. So I do like that
Yes.
she has this moment of connecting with him and even going the step further to connect with him on something that he enjoys. So she talks to him about classic movies and loving Capra films and the hope that those movies have. And,
Strange that she would be so judgmental of other people then, really, wouldn't it? Given that if
exactly.
she's such a fan of Capra, surely
Exactly.
most Capra movies
So,
are
yes. So
don't
I,
judge and love everybody,
exactly. So
ultimately, aren't they?
which is an odd choice. So I do like that when Bessie calls her out, we do see this kind of moment wash over her face of shame and kind of realization.
Yeah.
So that when she does kind of have this conversation with Dawson, it feels like, okay, maybe Grams can get to a place of being more open-minded. So she talks to him
Yes.
about just being hopeful and, you can't get a rainbow without some rain, and not being judgmental of
Poet.
his mother and that whole situation. Um, and so that gives him more perspective as well in terms of, Joey coming at him and throwing things in his face about how he's acting, Jen calling him out as well on how he's treating her, to the point where she tells him she's going to rip his head off for what he said, which I loved. Um, and
Yes.
now Graham's kind of showing him
Be
this whole
violent.
thing, about just being more hopeful about things. So, so Dawson's getting several people giving him this perspective so that now he can hopefully learn from that in this moment at least.
You would hope
Um,
so. Whether
yes.
we see it come to pass or not is another thing.
Yes. So he does
That we're not
apologize.
quite
Yeah. So he does
there yet.
apologize to Jen, and tells her that, I hope that you'll give me another chance, but I completely understand why you wouldn't. What I said was awful and wrong and unforgivable. So he is able to kind of grovel and admit his wrong and fault in that situation. And they make up. He also apologizes to Joey, where she admits, the mother button is an easy trigger, because she kind of threw at him, at least you have a mother. So, don't be so quick to dismiss her for what she did, was kind of her whole speech to him. So I like he makes things up with Joey as well. Um, and then we get this really great scene now of, Gail. Uh, so Mitch drove off, and then now kind of the hurricane has subsided, and he comes back, and he's just sitting on the steps, and she's sitting on the porch in a chair, and the screen door is kind of between them. And he just asks her why. And so I love her whole kind of reasoning and conversation, and her
Yeah.
honesty in admitting that she really had no reason, that she just found herself in a place of not really having any dreams or desires because her life was completely perfect. She had everything she wanted, a smart, intelligent son, a stimulating husband, the house, the job, everything she's ever wanted has come to realization. And so she felt herself just lacking this desire for things
Yeah,
because she
lacking.
had everything.
She says lacking a want.
Yes, I wanted
Lacking
to want
things.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, lacking things to want. And she says as much that, that truth would hurt him more than if she had just said, because I don't care about you anymore and I
Yeah.
now love Bob.
Yeah.
She did it for the reason that it was too perfect. She needed something almost to go wrong in her life so she could want
Well, yeah.
better.
Yes, so now, like,
What a
she ends
messed up
up.
mentality,
Yes,
Gail.
but it makes, like, she makes it make
It
sense.
makes sense. She does make it make
Yeah.
sense. But again, this is now the third scene of this episode, and we will move on to episode 6
Yeah.
very shortly, where the supporting players in Dawson's Creek have absolutely come out highlighting. It's
Yes.
not Van Der Beek, it's not Katie Holmes, it's not Michelle Williams, it's not Joshua Jackson who are nailing this best episode yet. It is, forgive me, I don't even know the names. It's Gail and Mitch,
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Leery.
Yes. Yeah,
I
they're
love that it's
great in
that
this
though. I
episode.
love that it gives them a real showcase.
Yeah.
Because it would be easy to have all the show be the main four.
Yes.
And
So
these
yeah,
guys
I
just come
love
in
that.
as
Mhm.
context pieces.
Yes, but this episode is all about developing these other characters. So then, just to kind of close out this episode, we just should kind of talk about Pacey's situation happening, and then we can move on to episode 6. But yeah, Pacey and Doug, he's helping Doug line, hurricane flags on the beach. He ends up going to Tamara's house, helping her board up her house, and here shows up Doug helping as well. So they end up riding out the hurricane at Tamara's. And Doug is being very flirtatious. We know that Tamara loves musicals as she's had this connection with this other gay teacher earlier episodes.
Yes.
So then they're gushing over musicals and Doug is singing to her and this whole thing. And Pacey's getting jealous seeing how much they have in common. And just, seeing that, somebody can actually show affection towards her when he can't. So he's getting very frustrated in the situation. And then it's to the point where, when Doug is not in the room, Pacey makes this comment saying the comments, oh, Doug's gay, right? Da, 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 all this. So then when Doug asks Tamara out on a date, saying, hey, we can go to a movie, we'll make a real date out of it. And she's like, oh, well, it won't be a real date, right? And he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, because I know that you're gay. And it turns into this whole thing. And he immediately turns to Pacey and says, you told her, didn't you? You told her I was gay. And gets pissed. And Tamara's kind of defending Pacey. And she's like, oh, no, I just have gaydar. I looked at Pacey's like, she's got gaydar. And
So
Tamara just kind of
I didn't do anything. It wasn't my
yes.
fault.
Yeah, so I like Tamara kind of defending him and saying, oh no, I just figured it out myself.
Yeah.
And him getting more and more mad and knowing that Pacey said something to the point where he just ends up looking like a crazy person because he pulls out his gun and points it
He
at Pacey
does.
to say
Dangerously
he's
so.
not gay. So very much obviously an extreme reaction to somebody calling you gay. So
Yes. Well, there's insecurities at play with Mr. Doug as well, isn't there, I think?
Yes. So ultimately that kind of kills the vibe. And so Pacey says, no, he's not gay, da 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 da. And Doug puts his gun away. And she's just like, now, like, yeah, I don't think so.
I don't want anything to do with you.
Yes. But then that plays into Doug leaving, Pacey kind of circling back and telling her that, I'm jealous of every man who's got to, profess their feelings for you, like in a public way.
Yeah.
So it's just another glimmer that this relationship's just not going to work. um and even Tamara expressing concerns that they're getting sloppy, that this is dangerous. But they end the episode being together, hooking it up. So
And
kind of some
they do.
foreshadowing of what we're going to get kind of coming into this next episode. It's not going to be as
Yes.
easy as this episode kind of tied it up to be.
No,
um
and this next episode, as we now move into it, episode 6, titled
yeah.
Baby, it is very Pacey and Tamara focused. It's kind
Yes.
of split between a lot of Pacey and Tamara and the birth of the baby,
Yes.
of
Of
Bessie's
Bessie's
baby, of
baby. Yeah.
Joey's nephew,
Nephew.
as it is.
Yeah. Yes.
Which, I mean, yeah, following on from that, Pacey kind of elaborates that he wants to be more open, almost.
Public
He
with
wants
her.
to. He wants to be. Yeah, he wants to go out and do things together in public.
Yes.
This is a interesting argument that he has, given the illegality of the situation.
Yes. So he's like, we can just go
Um,
to another town where no one knows us, and
yeah.
we can. So synopsis of episode
Yes, it moves on into
105.
this episode anyway.
Yes. Baby. The miracle of life surprises everyone as Bessie and Bodhi's baby decides to make an early entrance. Finding her very pregnant sister on the side of the road, a panicked Joey transports her to Dawson's house to wait for an ambulance. A bad traffic accident and limited resources delay the ambulance, and it becomes very clear that Bessie is going to give birth on Dawson's living room floor. Despite desperate, Joey enlists Jen's grandmother, a registered nurse who disapproves of the interracial couple's decision to have a baby, much less one out of wedlock, to help with the birthing. Meanwhile, Pacey's affair with Miss Jacobs is leaked to the high school rumor mill, with news of the scandal traveling all the way to the school board. In an uncharacteristically mature move, Pacey gallantly saves Miss Jacobs' job and reputation, only to be given a heartbreaking blow.
You could say it's a heartbreaking blow, but I was gonna say, but is it? Yes, it is. But is it not what he was expecting at
I
this
mean, no,
point?
I think he had this very idealistic idea about them.
What's he gonna do? Move to where they going? Where's she going? Rochester.
Yeah.
Is he gonna
I
move
mean,
there with her now?
you have to remember, even though he doesn't look it, he's a 16-year-old boy. So he's not
Yes,
thinking
I
that far
suppose.
ahead. I mean, for him to even suggest they go on dates and things and be in public, So that's how it starts. He's trying to convince her to maybe go out of town. She doesn't really say no, so he gets really optimistic. So he's telling Dawson about it in the bathroom. He kind of checks under the stalls and doesn't see any feet. Um, and then we do find that there was like a stoner guy in there standing on one of the toilets and hears the whole thing. And ultimately, now rumors are around the school that Pacey has been having this affair with Miss Jacobs.
There's comments made in her classes.
Yes, the students are making really kind of weird comments. And so tomorrow's like, what is happening? So now it moves up to where now school board wants to investigate it, and it's this whole big situation that happens. To the point where she gets a lawyer. She won't even talk to Pacey.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very much kind of cold to him. And so it's kind of the beginning to the
It's
end
not
of the
even.
relationship.
It's coldness not through desire to be cold.
No.
It's coldness through legal necessity.
Yes, and protecting herself from going to prison, essentially.
Yeah, because
Um,
she would be, in serious criminal
yes.
trouble should this actually be proven true. And
True.
this
Yeah.
whole this very noble act that Pacey does do during this kind of board member hearing
Yeah.
that Miss Jacobs is having, that Tamara,
Yeah.
have I just made
Tomorrow.
up a name? Yes,
Tomorrow.
is having. He's very mature. He's very, very kind of endearing.
Yes.
as far as we're concerned, to Pacey. The fact that he comes out and says things like, do you realize how, how kind of, what's the word I'm trying to think of? How much of a kind of good thing, terrible phrasing I'm using here. What on earth word am I trying to think of? He basically, sorry, my mind has gone completely
No.
horrendous here at the moment. He basically says,
Selfless.
thank you
Yeah.
for thinking I could possibly sleep
Yeah.
with this woman. That's what
Yeah.
he says. Oh my God, I'm so grateful that you think me, who looks in the mirror every day and doesn't really see much, sees an average dude who gets average grades with just kind of no real special talent. You think
Yeah.
I, out
Would
of
be capable.
anybody, would be capable of being more than just another one of her students. And I love that. I
Yeah.
love that he comes
How
out
he is
with
able
that.
to spin this, that he made it up, and he doesn't just say he made it up. He kind of goes that extra mile to really sell this point,
Yeah.
and does this for her to protect her,
Well, yeah,
knowing,
because not
you
only
know,
no, okay, that is ultimately a lie, what he just said, but it
yeah,
comes from his own feelings towards himself.
yes,
Absolutely, it does. You believe that. You acknowledge that he probably does feel that way
believe
about
that
himself, and
about
that's why
himself,
he
yeah,
was obviously so happy to
and
be
wrapped
in
up in
that.
this situation, yeah,
Yeah,
and
to be in that relationship with Miss Jacobs, that he has to now twist that to the point of, you really think I'm good enough for her?
yes, and it's a really strong point of maturity and growing up for Pacey as well. It really knocks him out of this idealized thinking. We talk a lot about his, over idealized view of things, but I think this relationship did the same thing to Pacey. So the fact that he's able to grow up and really have this mature moment of stepping up and doing this and protecting Tamara in this way, really speaks to, him having this, next phase of growth for himself. And ultimately, it is this really beautiful ending between the two of them. The fact that he's
It
not
is,
fighting
yeah.
needs to end. He understands what has to happen. She's moving to New York, and um, they have this nice moment and hug goodbye, so I like that they have a very sweet ending as well, and there's no hate or ill will between the two of them when this whole thing kind of ends. So I think
Even
they
though you could just point and say sex offender.
yes.
You
So they
could
do.
do.
You
It
could.
wouldn't be wrong.
No, it would not be wrong. So they tie up this story, I think, really nicely. Um, and then we get into Bessie and that whole situation, which, just in reading my synopsis, it also reminded me that another one of Graham's criticisms of Bodhi and Bessie was the fact that they were so young. And she was like, I'm against, children having children. You aren't going to know how to handle the situation. So it was a criticism as well of their age and having kids, and um, on top of the other issues that she had. So it just reminded me that I did mention that, she had a list of reasons. Um,
A
yeah.
question. Um, Now, forgive me for assuming this, but surely in Graham's era,
Mhm.
people were having children pretty young.
Yes.
People were
Well,
having children probably younger than Bessie and Bodhi are.
out of
Why is
wedlock,
Grams being a big
not
hypocrite?
not out
Grams
of
the
not
hypocrite. Grams
n-
the racist.
not
Grams is
out of
terrible.
wedlock. So
No,
very much.
sorry, I forgot the wedlock
Yes, but
angle. Sorry, Grams.
I told you it was a list. It was a list of
You
things.
have all these
Yeah.
rules, Grams. You need to
Yes.
relax.
Yes, she
You
does.
need
Well,
to
she will. She
relax.
will. She will.
She doesn't even relax at the end of this episode when she actually does something nice. She actually does something nice, but then at the very, very end, continually presses her ideology on people that
On
aren't
Jen,
interested in
yes.
following it.
Yes. So, getting into this whole situation, I love that, Bessie's trying to get to the hospital. She's stuck the truck is stuck, and so she can't go. So they row over to Dawson's. The fact that Joey's rowing too slow, and she's like, "Get out of the way." And then you actually see like Bessie pregnant rowing faster, and her water
Yeah,
breaks, and Joey's like, "We're leaking." Just like, it's not the boat, Joey. She just
really, honest to
doesn't get it.
goodness.
Yes. And so ultimately there's a holdup with the ambulance, so they need help her delivering this baby. Dawson, of course, is trying to record the whole thing because Bodhi can't
Which
be there.
actually, I mean, it's the one thing Dawson's doing actually in this episode. It is quite a Dawson adjacent episode.
Yes, he's
Which
trying. But
he's trying his best to get involved. He's
yes.
trying his absolute best to
Um,
get involved.
but
He's
even then,
shoving a
Graham,
video camera
yes, and then
in front
Graham
of
tells him to get out, which is great.
yes, she does, but he is shoving a video camera right into Bessie's face while she's in labor and at certain times in a slightly concerning state within
Yes,
labor.
that's when Gramps tells him to leave. So there's an issue with the baby, and there's quite a bit of blood, and Jen is kind of calling attention to it. So I love seeing Graham kind of step up and be like, "You are distracting my patient. You are worrying her. Please stop. Like, you don't know what you're talking about." Um,
I
and then
wouldn't have
even
been
Joey.
comfortable with Grams being the deliverer of the baby.
No, it was a very difficult thing, like, they had to get through, like, Bessie was kind of going off about, "No, not her," kind of thing, but in this moment, all they had was each other to get through this, so it's kind of like
Well, yeah.
so I liked that this bit of push of kind of forcing them together in this very serious situation of having to kind of look, past their differences and try to figure this out to get this done. And Joey, she's there, but she can't sit in there because she's hearing Bessie scream. And that plays into things where we get a little bit more development with Joey talking about her mother's cancer and her chemo and the
Yeah.
pain that she deal with, and how much Bessie reminds her of her mother at times. So seeing Bessie in pain is like reliving her mom
Not
and all of that
nice.
all over again.
It's not a
So
cheerful show, is it, really,
no,
Dawson's Creek?
no, not really.
It's quite miserable a lot of the time.
Yes, and so just very much like we have Pacey and Doug having this antagonistic relationship, we always see Bessie and Joey having a very antagonistic situation. And so ultimately, after kind of talking to Dawson about, you know, it being difficult to see Bessie in this position and how much she reminds her of her mother, she goes back in and supports Bessie and like takes her hand and sits
Yes.
with her as. So I like, the sisters kind of having this moment to come together as well, and this bringing them together. So ultimately the baby is delivered, and Graham has now done this thing to, bridge the gap between these two characters.
When they started
Ultimately.
saying the Lord's Prayer in the middle of it all, though, I thought it was getting a bit too cultish for my liking. I've got nothing, by the way, I've got nothing against nice religious people who just want to be nice to people. No
Yes.
issue at all. Stop trying to force it on everybody else, Grams.
Yeah, so she did use that as a distraction tactic because she saw Bessie getting worried. And then ultimately, after this whole day, she kind of calls out Jen and says, "How can you see what you saw today and not believe that God is real and all of this?" And Jen is I love that Jen is very much, trying to be respectful of her grandma's beliefs and telling her,
Yeah, it's the
"No,
best way to
you're
be.
not going to sway me. Like, this is what
It's
I
like,
believe."
yeah, I am fine. I am fine with you believing
What
all
you
these
want.
things. It's absolutely fine. Nothing against it.
Yeah.
Please stop trying to get me to believe it.
Yes. So this was kind of the first civil conversation they've had on the topic. So I like that at least this conversation was more open and conversational and not kind of this antagonistic thing that it's been up to this point.
Yeah,
So we're
and
getting a little bit more.
it was made into. I now believe in kind of humanity
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
and the goodness of people rather
Yes.
than God or a higher power or whatever.
Yes.
So I like that. I like that for Jen because obviously she's been through some tough stuff,
yes. So
and
I
she
like that
needs to
this is
have
also,
positivity.
yeah, and she needs to have a good support system. Her parents shipped her off away. So, all she really has is her grams. So I like that we are getting, you know, some growth in the relationship between the two of them. Because ultimately, their relationship will improve as we go through. So I like we're getting the beginning phases of grams opening up, being less, into religion kind of being this judgment call for everybody, being more open to supporting Jen through what she's dealing with. So
Religion should be a bringing people together thing, not a
yes.
dividing people apart thing.
Yes,
This has
not a
always been my feeling.
superiority kind of, not to be used for
No.
some type of superiority kind of thing. So I think Grams is getting there. I think their relationship is getting better. So that's where we're kind of heading. So I think this episode leaves
Yeah.
us in a good place, which, I'm
Oh, it
excited for.
does.
Our next episodes we'll be covering because one of them is like my favorite episode of the show. So yeah, that is basically kind of everything that happens in Baby
Yeah,
episode 6.
it's those two very kind of big changing, show changing storylines of the
Yes.
ending of Tamara and Pacey kind of eventually being okay with the separation.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And
I
growing up a
think
little bit in that way.
it will probably play on him for a short while longer, I would imagine, as the show goes on. Whether it does or not, I obviously don't know.
Yeah.
I would imagine it probably does, but it's a heartwarming end to that obviously can't go any further
Yes.
storyline,
Yes. And
and
then
then having it play alongside this
this
new
new
member of the
situation.
family
Yes,
storyline
and the kind of bonding between Joey
and the
and
bonding.
Betsy.
Yes.
Yes. And then just to kind of get a little glimpse that I think we get a little nod that Mitch and Gail are going to try to do like couples therapy type stuff. So they're going to try to work through this situation. Um,
Which is a
a, com-
mature way
a
of
mature,
it.
commendable thing. So, and I do want to
It
just
is.
give, I couldn't because I always got her name confused with Bessie actress's name, so I didn't want to say it before looking it up. Mary Margaret Humes is Gail. So
Okay.
amazing work
Yes,
from her
well
in
done.
that last episode because I think Bessie's actress is Mary Beth Peel is Bessie and
Mary
Mary
Beth
Margaret
Peel
and Mary
is
Margaret Humes.
Grams.
Oh, yes. And so yes, Mary in the name and three names and all of that. Like I wanted to make sure I looked it up first. So yes.
Basically, well done to Mary
Yes.
Margaret Humes
And
and
Mary Beth
Mary
Peel.
Beth Peel
Peel.
as
Yes.
Gail and Grams.
Yes. So yeah, I love that these episodes were very side character focused and developing them, and we got some really great performances
I actually
from
think
those
the lack
characters.
of not I mean, yes, okay, he's very evident in Hurricane and it's all
Yeah.
about him. Well, it's not really all about him, it's all about
Yeah.
his parents. But the shoving to the side, I'm gonna say, of Dawson in these two episodes made them better. It's not Van Der Beek's fault. It's not James Van Der Beek's fault. It's the fact he's just a detestable character.
I mean, yes, that last episode definitely did a lot to not highlight any positive attributes about Dawson, just
There's no
how he
positive
lashed
attributes
out at
about him.
people who were trying to support him. It was just awful. So yeah, I think it was a good move to kind of sideline him on this episode. We
The
do
only
see him being a
positive
bit of a
attribute about it,
and him being a
the,
supportive friend to Pacey, I think, in this
is
situation, I
he?
think was, I mean, yes.
No, I
Um,
suppose he is. Okay.
yes, like he
He
gives him
can
advice.
occasionally.
Yes. When Jen is asking him like about the gossip, he's really not playing into it. He's trying to support his
Okay.
friend. He's trying to you know, tell him, dude, just, this is how you
The
handle it.
one
Like,
thing. He can occasionally support his best friend, which should go without saying anyway. And maybe okay, I'll give him the fact that he likes old movies, but he's even obnoxious with that.
Yeah.
So I'm taking that away from him. He's occasionally supportive of his best friend, and he's played by James Van Der Beek. That can go for him as well.
Okay.
Again, it's not James Van Der Beek. I like James Van Der Beek.
Yes, yes.
It's Dawson Leery.
And do we open this
The
episode?
Walking Hurricane.
Is this the episode that opens with the movie night and with Jen and Dawson and Joey?
Yes, and there's the three of them there.
Yes, and it's very because it's we just kind of hold in the beginning on Joey and Dawson in bed as we normally see them having movie night, and then after the movie ends, Joey's like, "Okay, gotta go," and he's like, "Just one movie. We never watch one movie on movie night." And then we pan over and we see Jen has been invited and she's there as well. So now it's this whole awkward situation where Dawson's in the middle, where Joey doesn't want to stay because Jen is there and it's kind of ruining the vibe for her. And once Joey leaves, Jen can't stay because Grams will see that they're alone.
Yes.
Joey also, doesn't want Jen to go because then it'll make her feel like she drove Jen away. And it's just
and Dawson's in the middle of it all going,
yeah, and it's
I'll
awkward.
happily have both of you here.
Yes, and it's awkwardly all around. So then the two of them end up just leaving, and Dawson's there by himself, and he's like, movie night. So his whole movie night.
He can have movie night on his own.
I do like.
Also, how long is their movie nights that they always have at least 2 movies?
I mean, if it's the weekend, they're teenagers. Were you never a teenager, Morgan? Did you not do anything with anybody?
I'm a 1 movie a night kind of person. I can do 2. I can.
It depends on how early you start. If you start at 5 o'clock, you could do
that's not a night.
What do you mean that's not a night?
Movie. That's late afternoon.
If you start at 5, it's considered evening. So if you watch a movie,
evening.
5 o'clock is evening time.
5 o'clock is not evening. Refuse to acknowledge.
Yes. Even if you start at 6 o'clock, your first movie ends at 8 o'clock, and then you watch another movie 8 to 10.
Oh, that's fine.
On a teenager on a weekend. You act like you were never a teenager, Morgan. I'm sorry, old man Morgan. You didn't have movie nights with your friends. I'm so sorry for you.
Not more than 1 movie.
Okay.
No, I might have done that. I might be lying. Probably am lying.
You just want to criticize everybody. But yes, a great illustration of kind of this dynamic that's going to probably cause some issues going forward.
More issues? Surely not.
Yes, I mean, Joey has this underlying crush. Also, the two of them trying to figure out how to maintain this guy-girl friendship as they get older. A new girl coming in. Dawson and Jen trying to kind of navigate their relationship now with this new information Dawson has. So it's very much kind of just an illustration of how these relationships are going to develop in some interesting ways going forward. So I think that was meant to just give us a sneak preview of what's to come, I think.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Food for thought.
Yes. But I think that we'll call it for this episode of Morgan Hasn't Seen TV's Discovering Dawson's Creek episodes 5 and 6.
Yes. It's going to be apparently it's going to be a good one next time with particularly episode 7.
Yes.
But we'll be back pretty soon with another Discovering Dawson's Creek, and we'll certainly be back with another Morgan Hasn't Seen TV video here on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel even sooner than that. As we said before, subscribe, ding the notification bell on this channel for all the fun stuff we have here, and of course subscribe to the main podcast feed, It's a Wonderful Podcast, on all major podcast platforms for all the fun stuff we have there too, all the weekly shows. There are donation and Patreon links in the description of this video, as well as the social media as well. And I don't think we have anything else to say. I don't know why I did that. I've gone a bit strange now. Yes. Sorry, we need...
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah. Enjoyably so. There's one thing left to do, Janine, and of course, do it to the tune of the Dawson's Creek theme song.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over.
Very nice. Bye.